National Day, April 30, and in Tehran, the office of Iran's new supreme leader issued a statement that is being read as both a rallying cry at home and a strategic warning to neighbors and to Washington. In blunt language, the leader laid out a vision of the region without what he called foreign intrusion. He said, in part, they don't have any hope in our region, they don't have any fortune in our region. If they have a place, it will be deep down in the water of the Gulf. That was followed by an even starker invocation of national resolve. The Iranian people have proved to be strong enough, and today 90 million Iranians inside Iran and outside Iran will use all their capabilities, all the technological abilities, political power and missiles powers and nuclear powers in order to defend our country. Those are sweeping declarations, and they come at a moment of intense friction. Iran and the United States remain locked in a standoff that has rippled across the Gulf and beyond. In the days and weeks since open hostilities escalated, naval operations have been stepped up on both sides. The statement reiterated Tehran's insistence on sovereignty over the strategic waterway that sits at the center of so much geopolitical tension, the Strait of Hormuz, and declared that control over that choke point is non-negotiable. The leader said, "We will defend our country, the Islamic Republic of Iran, today through controlling the Strait of Hormuz." That phrase, a clear reference to the strait that links the Gulf to the world's oil routes, underscores why this message is being treated as more than rhetoric. On this occasion, the leader framed Iran's posture as a corrective to what he described as a failed security architecture in the region. He argued that the presence of outside military forces, particularly American bases and deployments, has not provided stability, but rather vulnerability for the Gulf states. He urged regional governments to reconsider their reliance on foreign military guarantees and to build their own security arrangements. He said Iran had already set up a new equation that will be for the benefit of all countries, and suggested that economic gains could flow to Gulf neighbors under a new arrangement that sidelines external powers. That appeal to regional audiences and the warning to Washington were two of the speech's central themes. The leader's remarks also repeated Tehran's long-standing justification for the attacks that have alarmed US and Gulf capitals. Iran says it is striking Gulf targets because of the US military presence in those countries. In the statement, he again told Gulf governments that they should not rely on the US military presence, but should focus to build their own security architecture or rely on their own security resources. The implication is explicit. Iran seeks to shift the security balance and to make the region less dependent on external militaries. The timing of this message is significant. They could mean for the conflict. State media distributed the text on the morning of a national holiday dedicated to the Persian Gulf, a day whose symbolism Tehran has long used to underscore its historic claim to the waters and to press back against alternative names and competing narratives. Against that ceremonial backdrop, the tone of the statement was unmistakably adversarial and strategic. At the same time, questions linger about the nature of Iran's leadership and the extent to which this voice represents the view of a single figure or of a broader command structure. Since the outbreak of open conflict, there have been conflicting claims and public uncertainty about key figures inside Iran's power apparatus. US officials have at times expressed doubt about who is in operational control, while Iranian officials and state media have sought to project unity and continuity. In that environment, the written publication of the Supreme Leader's words, rather than direct, on-camera appearances, is being read as part of a deliberate communications approach, assertive, carefully staged, and tightly controlled. The speech also served as a domestic mobilization piece. By invoking the figure of 90 million Iranians inside Iran and outside Iran, the leader reached beyond the borders of the Islamic Republic to the global Iranian diaspora, calling for a unified response. He described a wide array of instruments for defense, technological, political, and military, and tied them to national survival. The language was meant to rally public sentiment and to signal that for Tehran, the confrontation is existential. International reactions to these kinds of statements are inevitable and immediate. For Washington, the message complicates diplomatic pathways and ratchets up risk. For Gulf governments, some of which host US personnel and assets, the appeal to distance themselves from the United States is a direct challenge to long-standing security arrangements. And for commercial and shipping interests, Any intensified talk of control over the Strait of Hormuz raises concerns about the free flow of shipping and oil, a concern echoed in markets and in foreign ministries across the globe. The leader's remarks also included rhetorical flourishes meant to delegitimize foreign involvement and to assert a moral framing for Iran's actions. He said that outsiders who commit evil have no place in the Gulf region, but rather in the depths of the water. It is violent imagery intended to make the point that foreign intervention will not be tolerated, and that Iranian forces view control of the sea lanes as both a strategic lever and a symbol of sovereignty. Already, both sides have taken steps to control movement in those waters. Tehran has said it will assert greater control over shipping in its perceived territorial zones. US forces have emphasized freedom of navigation operations and interdiction efforts. That practical maritime contest is layered atop a diplomatic struggle where messaging and symbolism often matter as much as kinetic actions. Within Iran, the speech dovetails with a narrative the government has been promoting since the early days of the conflict, that external enemies sought to decapitate the country's leadership, that Iran has withstood those efforts, and that its institutions remain intact. The state's messaging emphasizes continuity, presenting the supreme leader as the unbroken center of authority, directing state policy and defense. The speech's insistence that Iran will use all their capabilities to defend the country is consistent with that continuity narrative. Overseas, the United States has been explicit in its concern about command and control questions inside Iran. American officials and even the president have at times said the US lacks clear visibility into who is making decisions in Tehran. That claim is in tension with Tehran's own portrayal of a functioning leader's hip apparatus. The result is a layer of uncertainty that both sides can exploit. Iran to galvanize domestic support and to project deterrence. The US to justify caution or to keep military options open. Beyond the immediate back and forth, the speech contains a diplomatic overtone. The leader suggested that the new arrangement he envisions could be for the benefit of all countries in the Gulf. Whether that assertion is intended as an invitation to bargain, a carrot to accompany the stick, or simply as further justification for Tehran's stance is open to interpretation. Either way, it is a reminder that Iran views the issue through both geopolitical and economic lenses. Control over the strait is not just about military leverage, it is about trade, revenue, and regional influence. For neighboring governments, the calculus is difficult. Many Gulf states depend on the United States for military assurance, but also share economic and security concerns that put them in a precarious PPP position. Iran's strategic outreach to these states, urging them to distance themselves from the United States, is unlikely to produce a uniform response. Some governments may quietly seek alternatives. Others will publicly reaffirm their alliances, and all will be calculating how to protect vital trade and energy routes while avoiding escalation. The speech also underscores why international institutions and third-party mediators face a steep challenge. When a central player publicly pledges to shift the balance of power, any negotiations that follow will have to address red lines that both sides publicly declare as non-negotiable quills. For Tehran, sovereignty of the strait and the removal of what it sees as foreign military threats are framed as existential. For the United States and its partners, maintaining access and its portent allies is likewise presented as indispensable. As for the immediate operational picture, the waters of the Persian Gulf are now the focal point for a wide struggle. Both Iranian and US commanders have shown an appetite to assert presence at sea. Commercial shippers in shores and energy markets are watching closely for disruptions. Any closing or major disruption of shipping there would have immediate global consequences for oil and gas markets, insurance rates, and supply chains. The rhetorical escalation in the leader's statement, particularly the claim of readiness to employ missiles, powers, and nuclear powers and defense, will almost certainly intensify scrutiny among Western capitals and regional governments. Whether Iran was signaling a literal willingness to employ nuclear weapons, invoking nuclear capability as a deterrent concept, or using the phrase as broader political theater depends on how analysts parse the rhetoric versus the material reality. What is clear is that the leader intended to send a message. Iran considers itself under threat and intends to use every lever it believes it possesses to deter aggression and to assert sovereignty. In practical terms, the speech will play out across multiple arenas, in the Gulf's choke points, in diplomatic channels, in intelligence reports, and in the court of public opinion both in Iran and abroad. It is meant to reassure allies at home while warning adversaries that the cost of escalating the conflict could be high and that Tehran believes it has the means to shape the outcome. As the day progresses, attention will turn to how other Gulf governments respond, how international shipping reacts, and whether diplomatic back channels between Tehran and Washington or between Tehran and regional capitals see any movement. Behind the rhetoric, practical questions remain. Will Gulf states publicly distance themselves from the United States? Will Tehran translate this new equation into cooperation or coercion? And will the naval presence on both sides lead to accidents that could further inflame the situation? For viewers and listeners outside the region, the speech is a reminder of how quickly local disputes over territory and influence can have global consequences. A statement delivered on a national holiday can alter markets, change diplomatic calculations, and ratchet up the risks of military confrontation. The language of deterrence and the invocation of national unity and historical rights is familiar in the history of modern conflicts, but in the enclosed waters of the Gulf, words can be particularly consequential. In closing, the Supreme Leader's message today combined a mix of grievance, warning, and mobilization. He declared that foreign powers have no place in Iran's waters and asserted Iran's readiness to defend the nation with all their capabilities. He called on regional states to rethink alliances and suggested that a new regional order could be in the offing if they do. Whether that order will take shape through negotiation, coercion, or continued confrontation remains the defining question of the moment. 4N. How the Gulf watchers, markets price risk, and diplomats work behind closed doors. The words spoken on Persian Gulf National Day, stark, declarative, and aimed at both domestic and international audiences, have joined a litany of recent statements that together will shape the next stage of this dangerous and complex standoff.